I took the job at High Plains Animal Clinic because in rural Wyoming, you don't really get to be picky. You take what shows up. A farmer's border collie with a porcupine face. A heifer that's bloated and screaming like a person. A barn cat with half its ear gone and a temperament to match. In the winter, when the wind comes off the flats and the whole world looks bleached. Folks will drive an hour on black ice to save a dog they've had for 3 months. Then they'll hand you a wad of cash, like an apology, and tell you not to judge them for crying. I wasn't a vet. I was a tech vaccines, blood draws, cleaning, bandage changes, intake forms. Kennel runs. The work was steady, and the pay was better than anything I'd found after the hardware store cut hours. Dr. Halverson, everyone just called him. Doc ran the place, like a ship in a storm, calm voice, sharp eyes. A habit of saying less than he knew. The clinic sat on the edge of town, tucked between a grain elevator and an empty lot where tumbleweeds went to die. One squat building, tan siding, fluorescent lights that made everything look tired. When you walked in, you hit reception first. A counter, 2 chairs, a rack of pamphlets about heartworm and spay-neuter. Past that was the exam hallway with 3 small rooms. Then the treatment area steel table, sink, drawers full of syringes and gauze and instruments that always smelled faintly like disinfectant no matter how much you scrubbed. In the back was surgery, locked unless Doc was in there, and beyond surgery was what everyone called the kennel corridor. That corridor was the part of the clinic that made me understand why people in town said we did God's work. It was where the noise lived. Chain link runs on both sides, metal bowls clipped to the gates. Concrete floor that never stayed clean for more than 5 minutes. It was where the abandoned dogs waited. Where the hit-by-car cases lay groaning. Where the animals that didn't like people learned to tolerate hands because they had no other choice. The kennels were numbered with plastic cards and black marker. 1 through 11 on the left, 13 through 22 on the right. The numbers weren't fancy. They were the kind of labeling you do when you're busy, when your priority is speed and clarity, not aesthetics. Kennel 12 wasn't in the corridor, not the way you'd expect. The first week, I didn't notice because you don't come in on your first day and start counting gates like you're auditing a prison. You're too busy trying not to screw up, too busy learning where Doc kept the sedatives. How he liked his surgery packs laid out. How long you could let the autoclave run before the sterile wrap started to smell like hot paper. But you can't work night shift long in a place like that without noticing the empty spaces. 2 doors back from surgery, on the left side of the corridor, there was a solid steel door where a run should have been. No chain link, no view inside. Just a door with a reinforced frame and a narrow vent at the bottom, like an old utility closet. On it, a plastic card holder was screwed in. The same kind as the kennels. The card in it was blank. Not erased, not smudged. Blank like it had never been written on. I asked about it on my second night, while I was mopping up a puddle of urine and bleach water under Kennel 7. The older tech on shift with me, a woman named Marla who'd been here since before Doc bought the building, didn't even look at the door when I nodded toward it. "Don't worry about 12, she said. I paused with the mop dripping. "Why is it blank? Because it stays blank." That was all she offered. I waited for more. Marla wasn't the warm, chatty type, but she also wasn't rude for no reason. If you asked her a question about parvo protocols or how to restrain a fractious cat, she'd talk your ear off. This time her tone had that flat edge people get when they're stepping around something sharp. "What's in there?" I asked. Marla wrung out the mop with slow, deliberate movements. "It's reserved." "For what?" She met my eyes then, and something in her expression made me wish. I'd kept my mouth shut. It wasn't anger. It was warning for whatever comes, she said. And whatever doesn't leave. That night, every time I walked past the steel door, I felt it. Not a gaze, exactly. More like awareness. Like the air in front of it was charged. Like if I leaned close enough, it would know my name. Around 2:40 a.m., the corridor quieted. Most of the animals had settled, exhausted by the stress of being somewhere unfamiliar. The clinic had that late-night stillness where you can hear the hum of the HVAC, and the faint click of the refrigerator and treatment cycling on and off. I was in the back, refilling water bowls, when I heard scratching. Not the frantic scratching of a dog that wanted out. Not the steady scrape of a cat pawing at a gate. This was slow, measured, scrape, pause. Scrape, scrape, pause. I froze, my hand still on the clip of a metal bowl. The sound came again, not louder but clearer now that the rest of the corridor had gone quiet. It was coming from the steel door from the inside. Scrape, pause, scrape. My skin tightened across my shoulders. I took a step closer, against my better judgment, and leaned toward the door. The vent at the bottom was too narrow to see through, but a faint smell leaked out wet fur, copper, and something like cold dirt after rain. The scratching stopped. Silence held for a beat, so complete I could hear my own pulse. Then came one last sound, right against the metal. A soft tap, tap, tap. Not from claws, from something hard and pointed, striking in a pattern like it was trying to be understood. 3 taps. A pause. 2 taps. A pause. 3 taps again. My mouth went dry as the thought formed. Uninvited and ugly. It wasn't scratching to get out. It was trying to write. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at a steel door like it might suddenly explain itself. The tapping had stopped, but my brain kept replaying the rhythm anyway, 3, 2, 3. Like my ears were trying to turn it to a word. It made my skin feel too tight. I backed away slowly, the way you back away from a horse that's spooked. Careful not to startle it into something worse. I told myself it was probably just a dog with a nail problem, or a bored animal clawing at a bolt. I told myself reserved kennels were a thing, aggressive bike quarantines, high-dollar boarders, wildlife holds. All reasonable, all normal, except ID worked enough clinics to know normal doesn't use blank cards and steel doors. When morning came, I asked Doc. He was in treatment washing his hands, sleeves rolled up, forearms damp and red from scrubbing. He looked up at me in the mirror when I spoke, eyes steady. "What's in Kennel 12? The water ran for 3 more seconds before he shut it off. He dried his hands slowly, like the question had shifted the pace of the room. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said. I tried to keep my voice even. "It was scratching last night." Doc folded the towel, placed it on the counter, and finally turned toward me fully. His expression didn't change much, but I felt the difference anyway, like a gate had been closed. "You hear scratching, you keep moving," he said. "You don't answer it, you don't talk to it, and you don't try to play hero." I blinked. "Answer it." Doc's gaze held mine. "That door stays shut. Understood?" There were questions stacked behind my teeth, but none of them felt safe to ask. I nodded once. Doc's shoulders eased a fraction like he'd been waiting for that. "Good. Focus on the animals we can actually help." It should have ended there. It almost did. 2 nights later, the patient arrived. It was just past midnight when headlights swept across the front windows and the gravel lot. I expected a rancher with the limping dog or a panicked call about a colicky horse. Instead, a county cruiser rolled to a stop right at the entrance. Engine still running, red and blue lights dark, but present like a threat. A man got out of the passenger side first, tall and broad in a canvas coat with a shearling collar. Cowboy hat pulled low. His boots left clumps of snow and mud on the concrete walkway. He didn't come inside right away. He stood by the cruiser and stared at the building like he didn't want to cross the threshold. Then the deputy stepped out. I recognized him, Deputy Lyle Jensen. Everyone did. He was the kind of law enforcement you got in small towns. Polite to your face, dangerous when the situation demanded it, and always tired. He nodded at me through the glass door, then opened the back of the cruiser. Something moved inside. Not like a dog shifting on a seat, like a person trying not to be seen. My stomach dipped. Deputy Jensen opened the rear door and pulled out a leash, but it wasn't attached to a collar. It was attached to a thick leather harness, the kind used for livestock, wide straps and metal buckles. The thing on the other end stayed low, hidden behind the car door, but I heard it breathe. Slow, controlled breaths, like it was making an effort. "Doc here?" Jensen asked when he finally stepped inside. His voice was normal, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the clinic like he was checking exits. "Yeah," I said. "Back in treatment." He nodded once. "Get him now." I hesitated. What as Jensen's gaze snapped to mine, and I felt the weight of it. Don't. That one word said more than a whole explanation would have. I turned and hurried down the hall. Doc came out of surgery prep in gloves and a mask hanging loose around his neck. The moment he saw Jensen, his face tightened. What happened? Doc asked. Jensen didn't answer. He just stepped aside so Doc could see through the front windows. The rancher in the shearling collar stood at the cruiser's rear door now, one hand gripping the harness strap, like he didn't trust the deputy to hold it alone. His other hand rested near his hip, not on a gun exactly, but close enough that the intention was obvious. Doc's jaw clenched. You brought it here. Jensen's expression was flat. We didn't have a choice. Doc looked at me then, and for the first time since ID started working there, I saw genuine caution in his eyes, not for himself. For me, go to the back, he said quietly. Unlock the kennel corridor, and don't open 12 until I tell you. My throat went dry. So it's 4. Doc cut me off with a sharp look. Go. I moved before my brain caught up. My feet carried me down the exam hall, past the smell of antiseptic and wet dog, into the kennel corridor, where the animals started barking at the change in energy. They could feel it too, whatever it was. Dogs that had been asleep lifted their heads, ears flattening. A cat hissed from behind a towel. The steel door for Kennel 12 sat exactly where it always did. Blank card, solid metal, quiet. I unlocked the corridor and flipped on the overhead lights. Fluorescents flickered to life, harsh and unforgiving. The corridor smelled like bleach and fur and old fear. I stood near the door to 12, hand on the keyring, waiting behind me. I heard the front door open again. The sound of boots, the clink of metal buckles. Then something else, something that made my skin crawl. A sound like someone trying to imitate a dog panting. Too measured, too deliberate, like they'd heard it once, and decided it was the right noise to make. Doc's voice carried down the corridor, calm and clipped. Keep it low. No sudden movements. The rancher muttered something I couldn't make out. Jensen said, Easy, easy. And then they entered the corridor, and I saw what was on the leash. At first glance, you could almost convince yourself it was an animal. It was roughly dog-sized, maybe a little larger. It moved on all fours. Its back rose and fell with controlled breaths. Its coat was there, technically, but wrong. Patchy in places, too thin in others, like hair that didn't know how to sit on the body it belonged to. The head was the part my brain refused to catalog. It had the general shape of a canine skull, but the proportions were off, jaw too long, forehead too flat, eyes set too forward. The eyes weren't reflecting the kennel lights the way an animal's would. They were dark and wet, and when they moved with intention. It looked at me. Not like a dog looks at a stranger, like a person sizing up another person. I felt my mouth start to open. Doc's voice snapped sharp, slicing through the moment. Don't speak. I swallowed the words like broken glass. The thing's ears, or what passed for them, twitched. It tilted its head slightly, as if listening for my voice anyway. The rancher's hand tightened on the harness strap. His knuckles were white. It killed 3 lambs, he said, voice rough. But it didn't eat them. It arranged them. Doc didn't react outwardly, but I saw the muscle jump in his jaw. Any injuries? Jensen answered. It's bleeding. We can't get close enough to see where. We sedated it once, and it woke up before it should have. Doc's eyes flicked to me. Open 12. My hand shook as I slid the key into the steel door. The lock clicked. For the first time since I started working here, Kennel 12 opened. The door swung inward, revealing a space that wasn't like the other kennels at all. No chain link, no cot, no bowls, just reinforced concrete walls, a floor drain, and a single steel ring bolted into the back wall, like something meant to be chained. The air that spilled out smelled like cold earth and copper. The thing on the leash took one step toward the open door, and then, in a voice that wasn't a voice, but wasn't an animal sound either, something in between. Wet and careful, it made a noise that shaped itself into a word. My name, perfectly, like it had been practicing the rhythm of it against the inside of the steel door. Evan, it breathed. Doc's face went white. Jensen swore under his breath, and the thing smiled just barely, the corners of its mouth pulling back in a way that showed too many teeth. That was when I understood with a sick certainty that Kennel 12 wasn't reserved for animals. It was reserved for something that knew how to pretend. Doc moved fast, but not frantic. Three's a difference. Frantic gets people bit. Fast keeps people alive. Eyes down, he told me, voice low, like he was giving instructions before a surgery. Don't stare. Don't answer. You're going to do exactly what I say and nothing else. I tried to swallow, but my throat had gone dry. The thing, whatever it was, stood at the threshold of Kennel 12, head tilted, eyes fixed on me with that wet, deliberate attention. Jensen tugged the harness strap. Move, he snapped, trying to sound like he was talking to a dog. The creature's gaze slid to Jensen for half a second, and I felt something in the corridor tighten, like it didn't appreciate being spoken to like an animal. Then it stepped into the cell. Doc nodded once. Now, Jensen and the rancher shoved the door shut. The lock clicked. The steel rang once, a deep tone that vibrated in my teeth. For a moment, everything went still. Dogs quieted. The air held. My heart hammered loud enough I wondered if it could hear it. Then came the scratching. Not frantic, not angry, measured, controlled. Scrape. Pause. Scrape, scrape, pause. Like it was writing again. Doc didn't flinch. He turned to Jensen. Paperwork. Jensen reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder, thick with forms. He handed it to Doc like it weighed more than it should. Doc didn't open it in the corridor. He tucked it under his arm and led us back to treatment like he didn't want those pages near Kennel 12. The clinic felt smaller once it was in the building. The walls seemed thinner. Every shadow in the hallway looked like it had depth. In treatment, Doc laid the folder on the counter and opened it. Inside were intake sheets, but they weren't the standard ones we used. They were county forms, stamped and signed in blue ink, with a header that read, Department of Agriculture Wildlife Incident Hold below that. In the species box was nothing. Not canine, not wolf, not unknown, blank. Doc's jaw clenched. They still doing that? Jensen leaned against the counter like his legs were tired. You want the truth, Doc. The truth is nobody wants their name on it. Not the rancher, not the county, not the state. Doc flipped to the next page. Weight, 112 pounds. Next line, weight again. Handwritten. Circled. 96 pounds. Then, 131 pounds. I frowned despite myself. How can it? Doc shot me a look. I shut up. The rancher stood in the corner near the sink, hat in his hands now, like he didn't know what to do with them. His face was weathered, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept. You said you could hold it, he said to Doc, voice cracking around the edges. You said this place can hold a lot of things, Doc said quietly. It can't fix the kind of stupid that brings it here in the first place. Jensen's voice went tight. Doc. Doc exhaled hard, then pulled the last sheet from the folder. This one was printed on heavier paper, the kind used for official notices. At the top was a list of bullet points, not rules, protocols. Doc read them silently first, then slid the page toward me. Read that, he said, and don't skip a line. My fingers trembled as I took it. Kennel 12 containment protocol. Do not work Kennel 12 alone. Do not photograph, record, or livestream Kennel 12. Do not speak within 6 feet of Kennel 12. Do not use euthanasia solution. Do not allow it to see its reflection. Do not refer to it as dog, wolf, coyote, or any animal name. Do not use personal names in its presence. If it repeats a name, do not react. If it asks a question, do not answer. Feeding must be done by Doc Halverson only. If it stops moving for more than 10 minutes, call the number listed below and evacuate. At the bottom was a phone number with an out-of-state area code. No agency name. No extension. My mouth went numb. This is insane. Doc didn't argue. It's real. Jensen rubbed his eyes. It said your name. I looked up sharply. How would it know my name? Doc's expression shifted. Not quite guilt, not quite fear. It listens. To what? I demanded. and my voice came out louder than I meant. In the sudden silence, even the dogs in the corridor quieted, like they were waiting to see if something would answer back. Doc stepped closer, lowering his voice. Two patterns routines. Calls, conversations. It picks up what people drop. The rancher spoke, voice raw. It knew my wife's name. Jensen's head snapped toward him. It did what? The rancher swallowed hard. When we had it cornered in the lambing shed, it started crying like a dog. Then it stopped and it said, "Clear as day, Martha. Open the door." My stomach rolled. I thought of the measured scratching on steel. Practicing. Doc's eyes flicked to me again. "Now you understand why we don't say names." I stared at the protocol sheet. The line about euthanasia solution jumped out like a bruise. "Why can't we put it down?" Jensen's voice was flat. "Because we tried." I looked at him. "You did?" Jensen nodded once, jaw tight. "A year ago. Different animal, same kennel, different winter." The rancher's eyes went distant, like he was watching something that wasn't in the room. "It didn't die," he whispered. "It changed." A cold silence settled over treatment. Doc took the sheet back from me and folded it carefully, like it was fragile. "Evan, you can quit," he said almost gently. "I won't hold it against you. It'll pay out your hours. You can walk out that door tonight and never come back." My throat tightened. The sensible part of me screamed yes. "Leave. Get in your truck. Drive until the lights of town are gone. Forget this building. Forget the steel door." But then I remembered the way it had said my name perfectly, like it had been waiting for the chance. "It already knew me. How long has it been here?" I asked. Doc hesitated. "This one, a few hours." "No," I said, voice shaking. "How long has Kennel 12 been here?" Doc's eyes held mine. He didn't blink. "Before I bought this clinic," he said. "Before Marla worked here, before the town expanded past the highway." Jensen cleared his throat. "Doc." Doc's expression hardened. Jensen looked uncomfortable, and that scared me more than the rancher's panic. "You're supposed to call it in." Doc's gaze flicked to the protocol sheet, then to the phone on the wall. "I know." "You haven't," Jensen said. Doc's jaw flexed. "Not yet." The rancher stepped forward suddenly, face tight with anger and fear. "Why not?" Doc's voice dropped. "Because once I call that number, they come, and that's bad," I asked. Doc's eyes flicked toward the kennel corridor, toward the steel door we couldn't see from here but could feel anyway. "They don't come to help," he said quietly. "They come to move it." Jensen's voice went sharp. "Doc, that's the agreement." Doc's eyes snapped to Jensen, and for the first time I saw anger there. Real anger, and every time they move it, it comes back worse, in the sudden silence. We all heard it. From down the hall behind the steel door, a soft, careful sound. A dog whine. Perfect heartbreaking. Then, layered under it, the same sound again slightly off, like a recording played back through a cheap speaker. Then a third and a fourth, a chorus of imitation, building like it was practicing different versions of suffering. Jensen went pale. The rancher stepped back, crossing himself like he'd forgotten he believed in God until this moment. Doc's voice tightened. "It's trying something new." The landline on the wall rang once. Not the clinic phone, not even plugged in. Just a single ring, sharp and impossible. Doc stared at it like it was a threat. Then he turned to me, voice low and urgent. "Even," he said, "go lock the supply cabinet, the one with the sedatives, and do not, under any circumstances, let Marla go down that corridor alone." I swallowed. Why? Doc's gaze was steady, but there was something like dread under it. "Because it knows your name now," he said, "and if it can say your name, it can learn hers too." As if it heard him, the whining stopped. The scratching resumed slow, controlled scrape. Pause, scrape, scrape, and this time, from inside Kennel 12, a voice whispered through the vent at the bottom of the steel door. Careful and calm. "Doc. Halverson." Doc went still. Jensen's hand went to his belt, instinctive. The rancher made a sound like he was about to be sick, and I realized the worst part wasn't that it could mimic. It was that it could choose what to say, and when. It wasn't panicking. It was learning. I moved like my body was on autopilot, because if I let my mind fully engage, I was going to freeze. The sedative cabinet was in the supply room off treatment metal, padlocked, stocked with the things that made animals go limp and quiet. Ketamine, dexmedetomidine, midazolam. The stuff you treat like fire because handled wrong. It can burn you in ways you don't see until it's too late. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keyring once. It clinked against the tile and sounded loud enough to carry down the corridor. I snatched it up and locked the cabinet, double-checking the padlock like it could keep the world sane by force. When I stepped back into treatment, Doc was on the phone. Not the clinic line, the out-of-state number on the protocol sheet. His voice was low and measured, but I could hear the strain under it. Yes, it's here. No, we have it secured. No euthanasia attempts. Yes, I know the procedure. He listened for a long moment, face tightening. Then, tonight, Jensen watched him like a man watching a fuse burn. The rancher stood with his hat pressed to his chest, lips moving silently like he was praying without admitting it. Doc exhaled and said, "Fine." Then he hung up. "What'd they say?" Jensen asked. Doc looked at me first. "Marla's not here yet, is she?" I shook my head. "Not scheduled until 6. Doc nodded once, like he'd been hoping for that. Then he turned to Jensen. "Transport team's coming." Jensen's shoulders loosened slightly. "Good." Doc's eyes hardened. "Number not good. Just inevitable." The clinic lights flickered. Not a power dip, more like the bulbs hesitated, as if the building itself was thinking. Then they steadied again. From the corridor came another sound, subtle but unmistakable. The scrape of something being dragged along concrete. Not claws, not paws. Something heavy. I stared at the hallway, like it could suddenly spit the steel door into treatment. Doc's voice cut through my spiral. "Evan, you're on kennel duty." My stomach dropped. "What?" "You're going to keep the rest of the animals calm. You're going to stay out of the corridor unless you have to go in. You're going to make sure nothing and nobody goes near 12. He met my eyes hard. "Especially not alone." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him I didn't sign up for this. But the truth was I'd already been drafted the second. It said my name. Jensen cleared his throat. "You'll stay." Doc shook his head. "Number you'll be outside when they arrive." Jensen's brow furrowed. "Doc, I'm armed." Doc's gaze was flat. "That won't matter in there if you're armed. You're a liability." Jensen's jaw tightened, but he didn't push. That bothered me. If a deputy was willing to accept being told his gun didn't matter, then whatever was in Kennel 12 was beyond normal fear. I headed down the hall, trying to move like this was a normal shift. Like the clinic hadn't just become a containment site. The kennel corridor greeted me with the usual chorus of noise barks. Whines, the rattle of chain link as dogs jumped against gates. But there was a thread of tension in it now. Like all the animals could smell something wrong in the air, and they were deciding whether to fight it or flee it. I moved down the left side, checking water bowls, murmuring soft nonsense to nervous dogs. The way you do when your voice is the only comfort you can offer. I kept my eyes on the steel door. Kennel 12 was quiet. Too quiet. That scared me more than the whining chorus earlier. Quiet meant it was listening. As I reached Kennel 9, Marla walked in through the back door. She wasn't supposed to be here yet. Her hair was tied back, coat still on, cheeks red from the cold. She carried a thermos and a bag of gas station donuts. Like this was any other morning. She took one look at my face and stopped. "What happened?" she asked. I swallowed. Don't go near 12. Marla's expression didn't shift much, but her eyes sharpened. "It's here." I didn't answer. I didn't want to confirm it out loud. Something about speaking near that corridor felt like leaving scent trails in snow. Marla nodded once, like she'd been expecting it all week. "Doc call it in." "He did." Marla's mouth tightened. "Great." I stared at her. "You've seen this before." Marla snorted softly, humorless. "I've cleaned blood off these floors from things that didn't belong in a clinic." "Yeah, I've seen it." My skin crawled. "What is it?" Marla looked toward the steel door without turning her head fully, like a horse keeping an eye on a snake. "Depends on who you ask," she said. Some say it's a skinwalker. Some say it's a government mess. Some say it's a thing that crawled out of a hole nobody was supposed to dig. She finally met my eyes. I say it's something that learned the easiest way to get fed is to make humans do the feeding. A cold tightness wrapped around my ribs. Fed with what? Marla didn't answer directly. She handed me the thermos like a peace offering. Drink. You look like you're going to pass out. I took it out of reflex and sipped. Coffee. Bitter. Hot. It grounded me for half a second. Then I heard the dragging sound again. Closer, I froze. Thermos halfway to my mouth. Marla's eyes flicked to the steel door. It moving. It can't, I whispered. It's locked in. Marla's voice was low. You think that door is there to keep it in? That door is there to keep us honest. The air in the corridor changed. It felt heavier, like pressure before a storm. Then, from the vent at the bottom of Kennel 12, something slid outward. Not a paw, not a snout. A strip of paper. It crept out inch by inch like a tongue pushing it. It stopped on the concrete, damp at the edges. Marla stared at it, face hard. Don't. My brain shouted at me not to, but my body moved anyway. I stepped closer, slow, and crouched just enough to see. It was an intake form, one of ours. My handwriting on it. The date at the top was today. The patient name field read Evan. The species field was blank. And in the notes section, in neat block letters I did not write, were 3 lines. Open the door. You can fix it. It'll be good. My stomach lurched. Marla grabbed my collar and yanked me back hard enough. My boots scraped. Do not read that out loud, she hissed. I didn't, I whispered, throat tight. You were about to, she said, eyes wide now. Something like fear breaking through her usual toughness. That's what it wants. It wants you to make it real by saying it. The paper twitched on the floor as if something on the other side of the vent was tugging it like a fishing line. Then the steel door shuddered once. A quiet boom, like someone had leaned against it from inside. Not hard enough to break it, just hard enough to remind us it had weight. Marla stepped in front of me. Back to treatment now. I shook my head. Doc needs to see that. Doc already knows, I thought, but I didn't say it. I followed Marla out of the corridor, leaving the paper on the floor, like it was a venomous thing. In treatment, Doc was assembling a kit. IV catheters, saline, bandage scissors, suture packs. Tools for healing. Tools that suddenly felt laughable. Jensen stood near the front desk now, watching the windows, tense. Marla walked in and didn't waste time. It slid a form out, Evan's name. Doc's hands paused for half a beat. Then he kept moving. Marla's eyes narrowed, you know? Doc didn't look up. It's been doing that for years. It offers you what you want to hear. It prints promises on paper. It mimics compliance. Jensen's voice was tight. Transport team will be here in 20. Marla swore under her breath. 20 minutes is plenty of time for it to get in someone's head. Doc finally looked up. His gaze locked on me. Evan listened to me. Do not try to be kind to it. Do not try to be brave. Do not try to fix it. My mouth was dry. You said you could hold it. Doc's expression softened just a fraction. I can hold a body. Then it hardened again. I can't hold a mind. The clinic lights flickered once more, and from the hall, from behind the steel door, a sound came that didn't belong in a kennel corridor. A human laugh. Quiet, familiar. My laugh. The one I used when I didn't want anyone to know I was scared. Marla's face drained of color. Oh, hell. Doc's voice dropped to a whisper. It started wearing you outside. Headlights swept across the front windows. A vehicle pulling into the lot. Jensen's hand tightened at his belt. They're here. Doc exhaled like a man stepping into the worst part of a storm. Then we do this, he said. And we don't make it worse. The front door opened. Cold air rushed in, and a stranger's voice called out. Calm and official. High Plains Clinic. We're here for the transfer. The men who walked in didn't look like FBI. They didn't look like soldiers either. No tactical vests. No rifles slung across their chests. No boots loud enough to announce authority. They looked like contractors. 2 of them in Carhartt jackets with reflective strips. one in a plain gray hoodie under a windbreaker. All three carried hard plastic cases and a clipboard. Their faces were unremarkable in the way that felt deliberate, like you could pass them in a Walmart and forget them before you reached the aisle with bread. The one with the clipboard stepped forward first. He had sandy hair and a trimmed beard, and his eyes were the kind that never stopped measuring. "Dr. Halverson," he said. "In Winters we spoke." Doc didn't offer his hand. "You're early." Winters gave a small shrug, like time didn't matter as much as procedure. Weather's turning. That was true. Wyoming weather never asked permission. Outside, the wind had picked up, and snow was starting to skate sideways across the lot under the streetlight. Winters glanced around the clinic. His gaze landed on me, on Marla, on Jensen. "Who's on staff tonight?" Doc didn't answer that. He nodded toward the back. "It's in 12. Winters' expression didn't change. "We'll need the corridor cleared." Marla folded her arms. "You always say that." Winters looked at her for the first time, eyes cool. "Mom, if you'd like to stay in the building, you'll follow instructions." Marla smiled without warmth. "If you'd like to leave this building alive, you'll listen when we tell you what it does." Winters held her gaze for a long beat, then nodded once. Not agreement, just acknowledgement. "Clear the corridor." Doc turned to me. "Evan, stay with Marla." I didn't like that. Staying with Marla felt safer, but it also meant I'd be close enough to see what happened. Close enough to be a witness to whatever this really was. Part of me wanted to be outside with Jensen, breathing cold air, pretending the clinic was just a building with sick animals. But then I remembered, it already knew my name. There wasn't a safe distance anymore. There was only proximity. We moved down the hall together. The clinic felt tighter with the transfer team inside. Their presence added a new layer of tension, like the building recognized people who came with plans. In the kennel corridor, the dog started barking harder the moment Winters entered behind us. Not at him specifically, at the shift. Animals are better at reading the air than humans. They knew something big had walked in. He gestured, and his two men started working without speaking. They opened their cases and pulled out gear that made my stomach clench. A steel pole with a loop catch on the end. Bite gauntlets, a thick canvas muzzle that was too big for any dog I'd ever seen. A syringe gun in a foam slot, like it was a tool you'd use for livestock sedation. Only this one had extra restraints and a longer barrel. Doc watched them with a tight expression. "You brought trank," Winters nodded. "We brought enough." Marla muttered, "That's what you said last time." He stepped toward Kennel 12, like it was just another gate with a nervous dog behind it. The steel door was silent. Blank card still blank. The vent at the bottom was dark. Winters crouched by the lock inspecting it, reinforced. Doc's voice was low. That door wasn't built to keep teeth from chewing through. It was built to keep people from making mistakes. Winters glanced back at him, mild irritation flickering. "We don't make mistakes." Marla let out a short, humorless laugh. Winters stood and gave a nod to one of his men, a heavy-set guy with a shaved head. The man rolled his shoulders, slipped on the bite gauntlets, and moved to the door with the pole in his hands. Doc stepped in front of him immediately. "Number." The man stopped. Winters' eyes narrowed. Doctor stepped back. Doc held his ground. "If you open that door the way you want to open it, you'll give it what it wants." Winters' jaw flexed. "We're not here to debate. We're here to remove." Doc's voice went quiet. "It's not a raccoon in a live trap." Winters leaned closer, voice firm. "You called it in. That means you agreed to the transfer. Stand aside." Doc hesitated. I saw it in the tightness around his eyes. Not fear of Winters, fear of the next step, because he knew exactly how it went. Marla's hand touched my elbow, grounding me. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "don't say anything it says. Even if it sounds like someone you love." My stomach clenched. "Has it done that?" Marla's eyes didn't leave the steel door. "Yes." Winters nodded to his team again, this time sharper. The shaved head man moved forward. Doc stepped back, but his gaze stayed locked on the lock like he could, will it to hold. The man inserted a key into the door, his own, not ours. A master key, He turned it. The lock clicked. For half a second, nothing happened. No noise, no banging, no scratching. Just silence so thick it felt like pressure in my ears. Then, from behind the door, came a soft voice. Calm, friendly, Winterses. The name slid out like a snake, drawn long, almost affectionate. Winters froze. I saw his eyes flick slightly, just the smallest crack in that professional mask. Surprise, recognition. Marla's fingers tightened on my elbow. Doc's face went pale. Winters recovered fast. Open it, he ordered, voice a little too sharp. The shaved headman pulled the steel door outward. The smell hit first. Not wet dog. Not antiseptic. Not blood. Cold earth after rain copper. And something faintly sweet underneath. Like meat left too long in the sun. The corridor dogs erupted into chaos, barking so hard the chain link rattled. A cat screamed from somewhere down the row, a sound like tearing fabric. Inside Kennel 12 was the bare concrete cell, and the steel ring in the back wall, just like before. And in the middle of the cell sat the creature, low to the ground like a dog at rest. It looked smaller than before. Thinner, too thin. Its ribs showed under patchy fur. Its head was down. Its posture was almost submissive. Winters exhaled through his nose. That's it. Doc's voice was flat. Don't be fooled. The creature lifted its head slowly, eyes reflecting nothing. It looked at Winters, and I felt the air tighten again, like a net pulling taut. Then it did something that made my stomach turn. It wagged its tail. Not like a happy dog, like a person mimicking happiness, because they knew it made humans lower their guard. Winters stepped closer, stopping just outside the threshold. Containment pole. The shaved headman extended the loop catch carefully. The creature didn't growl. It didn't snap. It didn't lunge. It whined softly perfect dog whine, heartbreaking and small, and lowered its head as if offering its neck to the loop. The loop slid over its head. The shaved headman tightened it, and the creature smiled. Not with its mouth, with its eyes. In a blink-fast motion, it rose, not leaping, not pouncing, but unfolding upward, like it had been compressed and suddenly decided to stand. It wasn't dog-sized anymore. It wasn't even close. It stretched up, spine lengthening, shoulders rising, limbs elongating as if it had been wearing a smaller shape like clothing. The harness straps on its body snapped taut, leather creaking as if it was resisting the new geometry. The shaved headman stumbled backward, shock flashing across his face. Winters swore sharply. Sedate it. The man with the syringe gun fired. The dart hit the creature in the chest. It didn't react. The second dart hit its shoulder. Still nothing. The third dart hit its neck and bounced off as if it had struck rubber. The creature tilted its head, eyes locked on Winters, and then it spoke in a voice that wasn't dog anymore. It was human, dry, amused. You brought me the wrong medicine. Winters' face drained of color. His lips parted, and for a fraction of a second, he looked like he might answer like his mind was scrambling for control in a situation he couldn't control. Doc barked. Don't talk to it. Marla shoved me backward. Hard. Move. The creature stepped forward out of Kennel 12. The loophole in the shaved headman's hands yanked tight as the creature moved, and for a moment it looked like it might hold. Then the loop snapped. Not broke. Unhooked. Like the metal had decided it didn't want to be part of this anymore. The shaved headman fell backward onto the concrete, scrambling away. The creature's limbs bent wrong as it emerged into the corridor. Its head tilted as if it was reading the space, memorizing exits, cataloging faces. Its gaze swept over Jensen in the doorway, over Marla, over Doc, and then it landed on me. I felt the moment like a hook in my chest. Its mouth opened slightly, and it inhaled, slow, deep, like it was tasting the air. Then it smiled again, teeth too many, too sharp. Evan, it said softly, open the door. And behind it, in Kennel 12's darkness, I saw movement like the cell wasn't empty anymore. Like something else was standing up in there, wearing a different shape, waiting for its turn. That was when the clinic lights went out. The darkness this time wasn't an accident. It felt intentional, like someone had thrown a switch inside the building's bones. For a heartbeat, I only had the sounds. Dogs slamming against chain link, metal bowls rattling. The scrape of boots on concrete, a man swearing as something heavy moved too close. Then emergency lights kicked on, thin, red, and useless. Shadows stretched long and ugly across the kennel corridor, turning every corner into a hiding place. Back, Doc shouted, voice sharp and commanding. Back to treatment. Winters didn't shout orders now. He was breathing hard, and that alone told me how fast his confidence had died. The creature, no. The thing stood in the red glow, like it belonged there. It had the outline of an animal if you didn't look too long, but everything about it was wrong once your brain started connecting details. Limbs too long, joints that bent like they weren't anchored properly. The shape of its head shifting subtly with every breath, as if it couldn't settle on one face. It took a slow step forward. Not rushing, choosing. Marla shoved me hard toward the hall. Move, Evan. I moved. My boots slipped on the concrete because something had spilled a bowl of water. Urine, I didn't know. In the red light it all looked the same. Jensen was in the corridor doorway. Gun drawn now despite Doc's warning. His voice was tight. Stop. Stop right there. The creature turned its head toward Jensen. Not startled, not threatened, just curious. It made a sound like a dog panting, then let the panting dissolve into a chuckle that was painfully human. Lyle, it said, and Jensen flinched like head been slapped. The thing stepped sideways, smooth, almost graceful, and the red light caught the patchy fur along its shoulder. For a second the fur wasn't fur, it looked like hair glued onto skin. Doc grabbed my sleeve and yanked me along. Don't look at it, he hissed. How can I not? I shot back, voice shaking. You look at it long enough, you start giving it details, Doc said. That's how it grows. That's how it learns what you're afraid of. We hit the treatment hallway. The emergency lights were dimmer here, more shadow than visibility. Behind us, the kennel corridor erupted into chaos. Barking, metal banging, boots pounding. Then a scream. One of the transport men high sudden, cut off too fast. My stomach dropped. I turned despite Doc's grip. In the red glow at the corridor entrance, I saw the shaved headman on the floor, scrambling backward like a crab, eyes wide with pure animal panic. Something shadowed loomed over him. Not the main creature, something smaller, lower to the ground, moving wrong, like a bundle of joints in hunger. It latched onto his arm with a wet snapping sound, and the man screamed again, thrashing. The thing didn't tear. It didn't shake like a dog. It clung and listened, head tilted, as if absorbing the sound. Doc shoved me forward again. Keep moving. We reached treatment and Doc slammed the door to the kennel hallway shut. It wasn't a heavy steel door like 12. It was just a normal interior door with a lock that suddenly felt like a joke. Winters burst in behind us, face pale, breathing hard. One of his men followed only 2 of the 3. Whereas Winters started, then stopped. His eyes flicked to the closed door, like he already knew the answer. Jensen stumbled in last, still holding his gun, eyes wild. Marla grabbed the clinic phone, the normal one. Call it in, she snapped at Winters. Call whoever the hell you are. Winters' hands shook as he reached for his radio. He clicked it twice. Static. Nothing. He clicked again, harder. Bass. This is Winters. We have breach. Repeat. Breach. Static answered him like laughter. Doc's face went tight. No comms. Jensen swore. My radio's dead too. Marla's voice rose. Of course it is. Doc moved to the sedative cabinet, keys already in hand. He opened it, grabbed a vial, then paused. His hands trembled just slightly. What are you doing? I asked. Doc didn't look up. Making something that might work. You said euthanasia doesn't. This isn't euthanasia, Doc snapped. This is compromise. He drew up a syringe with practiced speed, mixing 2 different sedatives with something else. His jaw was clenched so hard a vein stood out in his neck. Winters stared at him. Doctor, you can't improvise. Doc glared. You can't improvise. You brought darts like this was a wolf with mange. Winters' face tightened. We didn't anticipate, Doc cut him off. You never do. The door to the kennel hallway rattled. Not slamming. Not banging. A slow, deliberate shake, like someone testing the lock. We all went still. Then came a knock. 3 taps, polite as a customer at a front desk. Marla's breathing went shallow. Jensen's gun lifted higher, aimed at the door as if bullets would make a difference. A voice spoke from the other side, calm, friendly, close enough that it sounded like it was standing inches from the door. "Doc," it said softly, "open up." Doc didn't answer. The voice chuckled. "Okay, how about Marla?" Marla's face drained. She didn't move, but I saw her eyes flick to Doc, to me, to the wall, like she was searching for something solid to hold on to. The voice continued gentle. "Marla, honey, you remember me." Marla swallowed hard. Her lips parted, and I saw the moment her brain tried to respond, tried to fill the silence the way people always do when someone says their name. Doc snapped. "Don't." Marla clamped her mouth shut, hands shaking. The voice sighed, exaggerated, almost playful. "No manners in there, that's fine." The knob on the door began to turn slowly. The lock should have resisted. It should have held. Instead, it clicked like the door had decided it didn't want to keep secrets anymore. Jensen stepped forward, gun aimed steady now. "If you come through that door," the voice interrupted him smoothly, "you'll shoot." Jensen flinched. The voice sounded like his wife. Same cadence. Same soft irritation. "Lyle don't," it said. Perfectly. Jensen froze like his bones had been magnetized. Marla let out a small, strangled sound. Winters stepped closer to Doc, voice low and urgent. "We need to contain it now." Doc didn't look away from the door. "You don't contain it, you redirect it." The knob turned fully. The door cracked open. A sliver of red light spilled into the kennel hallway beyond, revealing movement shadows shifting, shapes that didn't look like dogs. The air that seeped through the crack smelled like wet soil and copper. A long, pale finger slid into the gap. Not a paw, not a claw, a finger with too many joints. It curled around the door edge, slow and possessive, and began to pull. Doc lunged forward and slammed his shoulder into the door, forcing it shut again. The finger withdrew with a wet scrape, like it didn't mind losing that small battle. Doc's breath came hard. He turned to us, eyes wild now for the first time. "It can't get into surgery," he said. Marla blinked. "Why?" Doc's voice was rough. "Because surgery has the mirrors." Winters frowned. "Mirrors," Doc nodded once. "It can't see itself. That's in the protocol for a reason. If it sees itself, it stabilizes. It becomes one shape." My stomach sank. "And that's bad." Doc looked at me, and there was something grim in his expression. "No," he said. "That's worse than bad. That's permanent." Another knock came at the door, gentle, patient. The voice spoke again, quieter now, almost intimate. "Ivan," it said. I felt my chest tighten like a hand had closed around my lungs. "Open the door," it whispered. "It'll be good." Marla's eyes snapped to me, horrified. Doc stepped close, gripping my shoulder hard. "Don't you dare." The door handle rattled again. The lock clicked again. This time, the door didn't just open a crack. It swung inward, slow and unstoppable, like an invisible hand was pushing it. In the red glow, I saw the creature's face in the doorway. It wasn't wearing fur anymore. It was wearing a person. A man's face, mid-40s, sad green eyes. For a split second, my brain recognized it from somewhere, like a half-remembered dream. Then I realized why. It was my father's face. And it smiled at me like it had been waiting years to do it. My father had been dead for 6 years. Heart attack in a Walmart parking lot in Cheyenne. The kind of death that felt stupid, because it was so ordinary. I'd seen his face in photos, in old voicemails. I couldn't bring myself to delete. In the occasional dream where he was alive, and I woke up with that hollow punch of reality, I hadn't seen his face in the doorway of a vet clinic. The thing wore him with unsettling precision. The same uneven brow, The same faint scar near the hairline from a childhood accident. Even the way the smile tried to be reassuring, like he was about to tell me everything was fine. "Evan," it said. And my knees went weak. Doc's hand clamped harder on my shoulder, grounding me with pain. "It's not him," he hissed. I knew that, I did. But knowing isn't the same as feeling. My body didn't care about truth. My body cared about recognition. The creature took a step into treatment. Jensen raised his gun and fired. The shot cracked so loud in the tight hallway that my ears rang. The bullet hit the creature in the shoulder at least. It should have. I saw Jensen's arms recoil. I smelled gunpowder. The creature didn't even flinch. It looked down at its shoulder, like someone checking a stain. Then looked back up with mild disappointment. "Lyle," it said, still in my father's voice. "That's rude." Jensen's face twisted with horror. He fired again. This time, the bullet punched into the wall behind the creature, throwing dust and plaster. The creature hadn't moved. The bullet simply hadn't mattered. Like the space it occupied refused to be treated as solid. Winters swore and backed up. "This is impossible." Doc's voice was sharp. "Stop shooting." Jensen's hands shook, gun still up. "It's in here." Doc snapped. "Shooting is answering." The creature cocked its head, studying Doc like a teacher watching a student answer a question wrong. Then it smiled wider. "My turn," it said. The clinic phone on the wall rang. Not the landline, not the dead radio. The clinic phone, loud and real, and the sound of it wasn't an ordinary ring. It was a ringtone, a specific one. My ringtone, the one my father used to call me with after ID left home, but one that always made my stomach tighten because it meant he'd been thinking about me. My mind shorted. The instinct to answer hit me like gravity. Marla lunged for the phone, yanked the cord out of the wall with a violent jerk. The ring cut off mid-note, leaving a sudden silence that felt like a vacuum. The creature's eyes narrowed, and the air in treatment went colder. Doc stepped forward, syringe in hand. "Winters," he said, voice tight. "You wanted to remove it. Here is your chance. We can't let it settle in this space." Winters stared at the syringe. "What is that?" Doc's jaw clenched. "Enough." Winters' expression hardened. "Doctor, you don't understand what you're dealing with." Doc's voice rose. "I understand perfectly. I've been dealing with it longer than your contract's been alive." The creature chuckled softly. It sounded like my father laughing at a joke I didn't get. "Boys," it said, "stop fighting." It took another step toward me. My body tried to step back. There was nowhere to go. Behind me was the counter and the supply room door. To my left was the hallway to surgery. The hallway with mirrors. Doc's earlier words slammed into my head. If it sees itself, it stabilizes. One shape permanent. I looked towards surgery involuntarily, and that was my mistake. The creature's gaze followed mine. It smiled like it had just been handed a map. "Oh," it whispered, pleased. "There." Doc saw the shift too. His face went tight with panic. "No," he said, and he moved. He grabbed a rolling stool and hurled it into the hallway, not at the creature, but at the open doorway to surgery. The stool slammed into the frame and lodged there, blocking the entrance. The creature paused, head tilted, as if it didn't understand why a piece of metal mattered. Then it did something that made my blood run cold. It made itself thinner, not invisible, not mist, just less. Like its edges blurred and its shape could slip through spaces. Solid things couldn't. It moved toward the surgery door anyway, flowing around the lodged stool like smoke finding a crack. Doc shoved past it, shoulder checking Winters out of the way, and slammed the surgery door shut from the inside. I heard the lock click. Doc's voice came through the door, muffled but urgent. "Marla, get the mirror covers." Marla snapped into motion, sprinting to the supply closet. "Evan," she barked at me without looking back. "Help me." I moved, legs shaky. We reached the closet, yanked it open, and grabbed thick blue surgical drapes, heavy fabric used to cover equipment. Marla threw one bundle at me. "We cover every reflective surface," she said, breathless. "No gaps. What happens if it sees itself?" I asked, voice cracking. Marla's eyes flashed. "Then it stops pretending." A loud thump hit the surgery door from the other side. Not the creature. Doc, he hit it again. Hurry. I ran to the nearest reflective surface, stainless steel cabinets. The glass on the autoclave door, the glossy monitor screen, and slap drapes over them. Taping the edges with medical tape like I was sealing a wound. Another thump. Doc shouted something I couldn't make out. Then the surgery door handle began to turn from the outside. Marla froze. Number, the lock clicked once, then again, like fingers picking it. The handle turned further, Marla whispered. It can't get in. But it was getting in. The door creaked open a fraction. A sliver of bright surgical light spilled into treatment. Clean white light, too stark after the emergency red glow. In that light, I saw movement on the other side of the crack, a pale hand, long-fingered, curling around the edge of the door. Doc's voice came through, strained and panicked. It's in here with me. My stomach dropped. Doc! He didn't answer my name. He didn't dare. Instead, he shouted one word like a command and a warning. Reflection. Marla's face went blank with horror. Therese still a mirror uncovered. My eyes darted around treatment automatically, searching for shine, searching for any surface we missed. And then I saw it. A small rectangular mirror above the sink in treatment, half obscured by a drape that had slipped, leaving a thin corner exposed. In that exposed corner, I saw the creature's face. Not my father anymore. Not even close. It was something raw and unfinished, like it had been sculpted out of wet clay, and never allowed to dry. Eyes too deep, mouth too wide, skin stretched thin over shapes that didn't belong under human skin. And it was staring at itself, watching, learning. The creature's mouth moved in the mirror silently at first. Then a voice came from the hallway. Different now, lower, steadier. Less like mimicry and more like ownership. Oh, it said, almost reverent. That's me. Marla lunged for the mirror. But she was a second too late. The creature's posture shifted. Its shoulders squared. Its head lifted. It stopped flickering at the edges. It stabilized. Doc screamed from inside surgery, one sharp. Human sound of pain and terror. Then the surgery door swung open fully. Doc stumbled out, blood on his glove, eyes wide, backing away from something behind him. And behind him, filling the doorway like it owned the clinic, the creature stepped forward in its true shape. No fur, no mask, just a tall, wrong-limbed thing with skin like pale leather and eyes that reflected nothing at all. It looked at all of us, calm now, almost satisfied. And then it spoke, not in my father's voice, not in mine, not in anyone's. In its own now, it said softly, "We can begin."